I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. Are you ready for this election to be over? Yeah, me too. But you know what? As long as we still have one day left, let's enjoy. This will be fun. All things voting. That's our big story tonight. Well, another election season has come and gone without either presidential candidate stepping foot in either Oregon or Washington. We're pretty much used to that by now, but it wasn't always that way.
Hey, John Kerry, can you give my wife a kiss? All right! Yeah!
How about that? Back in 2004, Democrat John Kerry campaigned in Oregon, where he met with voters downtown. That same year, George W. Bush and his wife Laura came to Oregon. They visited with students in Southern Oregon, and then later the pair visited Southridge High School in Beaverton. I'm pretty sure I was there to cover that one. But this year, not so much. Former President Trump's campaign didn't even pay to be included in the Oregon voters pamphlet, which set off a landslide of misinformation and harassment toward the Oregon Secretary of State. He is on the ballot, though. Both parties pretty much assume our electoral votes will go to Kamala Harris. President Biden won Oregon by a lot 4 years ago. Still, President Trump did get 958,000 votes in Oregon 4 years ago, which ain't nothing. But apparently, it's not enough to get either side to campaign here. We've been getting a lot of messages like this one from Mike, who asked, why in the world do we still use this outdated and totally wrong Electoral College system? This does not reflect the will of the people or the majority vote. Oregon basically has no vote since we're not a swing state. That's a fair question. The U.S. is the only country in the world that elects our presidents the way that we do. We decided to explore the reason why. You remember the Electoral College from your high school civics class, right? If it's been a while, that's okay. Here's a refresher. Each state gets a number of electoral votes based on the number of legislators they have, which is based on population. In Oregon, that's 8, 6 representatives and 2 senators. After you cast your vote, whoever wins your state's popular vote, the vote of the people, gets all of your state's electoral votes. Well, everywhere except for Maine and Nebraska, that is, they split theirs by congressional district. That means that in many states, the electoral winner is a foregone conclusion. Take Oregon, considered solidly Democratic. So is Washington. So all 8 of our votes with the Electoral College are likely going to go to the Democratic candidate. This year, of course, that's Kamala Harris. Let's take a look at the numbers. Total votes in the Electoral College, 538. That's the same as the number of members in Congress plus 3 more for Washington, D.C. Winning the presidency takes 270 votes, just over half the available votes. 191 electoral votes exist in states that are solidly Democratic, and another 35 will likely go that way too. On the other side, 122 electoral votes come from solidly Republican states, and another 97 are likely. That leaves 93 toss-up votes. Those are the battleground states we hear so much about. The 7 states that have enough votes between them to swing the election one way or another. That's why you see the candidates going so hard in those places and generally ignoring the rest of us. But how did we get here? Blame the Founding Fathers.
The Founding Fathers really had suspicions of the mass public.
They thought most of the voting public, which at that time was exclusively white male landowners, could too easily be swayed by conspiracy theories and misinformation.
So the idea was the Electoral College would be this filter, and so the model at the time was that these electors would get together and would not necessarily follow the will of the popular vote, but rather would discuss and deliberate and choose the best candidate for president.
So who are these 8 people that we're trusting to cast our votes for Oregon? They're chosen by their political party. Here's Oregon Democratic Party Chair Rosa Colquitt.
They are elected in our county parties by our county party delegates and leadership. And our electors are also elected in our 6 congressional districts.
After the popular vote is cast, they fill out a form that comes from the Secretary of State.
All electors pledge and sign the form agreeing that we will support the candidate who is the nominee who is elected.
Remember, in Oregon and most other states, it's winner take all.
So we're not free agents doing what we think we'd like to do, but we make a commitment to support the candidate who is elected. This is a magnanimous responsibility. Our electors take it in that manner.
But is this really the best way to be electing a president in 2024? 5 times throughout American history, the winner of the popular vote did not win the Electoral College. That happened back in 1824, 1876, 1888, and 2000, when George W. Bush beat Al Gore in an election that came down to the Supreme Court. And then again in 2016, when Donald Trump won the Electoral College vote against Hillary Clinton, even though she got 2.9 million more votes from the people. Over the years, there have been attempts to abolish the Electoral College, but it is a steep hill to climb. It takes a constitutional amendment, which smaller states are not likely to go for. But reforms are possible.
You know, there is a thing that could be done in Oregon. It's done in a small number of states, in Maine, in Nebraska. We could allocate our electoral votes not necessarily as a winner-take-all, but by congressional district. That, I think, would be a sort of middle ground solution that would encourage candidates to compete. Let's say in Eastern Oregon, that would be a place where ex-President Trump would be very competitive.
So if you're wondering, in light of the Electoral College, if your vote really matters, well, of course it does.
A vote is the most precious thing we have. It is the most powerful nonviolent tool that we have, and that is the vote. And so all of us as electors, we are working very hard.
And not just for the race at the top of the ticket.
We have a congressional race in Oregon that is really could be one of the most critical races that determines the control of the House of Representatives, both the race in Washington and in Oregon.
But also,
there is a function of these elections that we don't want to forget, which is legitimacy, right? People vote, even if they're voting in a state where the results seem to be a foregone conclusion. It is really important to get your voice out there and to cast your ballot so that people know that Oregon's voice matters.
And by the way, it is mathematically possible for the two candidates to end up tied in the Electoral College. The magic number is 270, but a 269 to 269 deadlock could happen. If somehow that is the case, the newly elected members of the House of Representatives would get involved come January. You may have seen Veep. They did a whole episode on that. Each state delegation in the House would get a single vote, and if a candidate reached 26 votes, they would win and become president. It's actually happened twice before in our history. The last time was 199 years ago in 1825, when the House named John Quincy Adams the nation's 6th president. Here's a look now at voter turnout across Oregon, just one day ahead of the election. Fewer than half of registered voters have already turned in their ballots. That percentage represents 1.4 million Oregonians out of more than 3 million registered voters here. Turnout in Oregon for past presidential elections averages around 80%, though it appears we'll be hard-pressed to get there this year. In 2020, statewide turnout was 78.5%. 2016, it was just over 80%. 2012, nearly 83%. The presidential election with the highest voter turnout in Oregon in the past 65 years, well, it was this one between Kennedy and Nixon in 1960, with 86.5% of voters weighing in. Bringing things back to 2024 now, here's how turnout breaks down by political party. More than 570,000 Democrats are done voting, representing over half the registered Dems in Oregon. Nearly 450,000 Republicans have turned in their ballots, and over 312,000 unaffiliated voters have voted. That's less than 30% of the unaffiliated voters. Voting here in the city of Portland looks different this time around, with the addition of ranked choice voting for mayor, auditor, and 12 city council seats. We had a crew hit the streets in downtown today for a snapshot of how people are feeling about a different looking ballot and ranking up to 6 candidates in each race.
It's not what I'm used to doing, and I had to stop myself and kind of find an ink eraser and rub out what I'd marked there.
There was a lot of candidates. I don't think we need that many candidates.
Oh God, it was kind of overwhelming. I kind of went and kind of researched through endorsements and things like that.
Incredibly important to vote. Yeah, everybody should get out, not just for our national elections, but the local elections I think have a huge effect on what our day-to-day life looks like.
I agree. I voted. I hope you did too. The fact that hundreds of thousands of Oregonians simply don't vote year after year means they are a target, by the way, for political groups trying to get their precious vote. That leads to mailers like this that several of you have told us about. A viewer named Patricia got this so-called voting report card. It shows a table with Patricia's name and address at the top, which of course we've blurred, and then two of her neighbors and their addresses below. To the right are columns for each of the last 4 general elections. Under each year, it lists whether the person voted in that election or not. Patricia found this report card a little concerning, saying it seems like he was trying to intimidate her into voting by comparing her to her neighbors. Another viewer sent us this message about getting nearly identical letters from the same group saying they found it creepy. And it's not just here in the Pacific Northwest. Voters across the country are reporting getting letters like this, some going so far as to call it voter intimidation. Here's what a voter from Virginia had to say after receiving one of those report cards.
I understand the motive behind it is to sort of get people feeling like, oh, everyone else around me is voting. What's wrong with me? I'm being a slacker. I better go vote. And I have already voted, and my husband has already voted. I mean, we're not really the targets for this.
Now, the group sending the letters is called the Center for Voter Information. According to their website, they're a nonprofit, nonpartisan partner organization to the Voter Participation Center. The groups say they were founded to provide resources and tools to help citizens who are eligible to vote get registered and to cast their ballots. They may say they're nonpartisan, but the groups do have ties to Democrats. In 2020, ProPublica looked into it and found the groups had spent more than $80,000 supporting Joe Biden's presidential bid and other Democrats down the ticket. So how do those groups track down voters like Patricia here in Oregon? Well, her report card said the data was found using public records, and those records do show whether you voted or not, but not who you voted for. And yes, whether you voted or not actually is a public record. In Oregon, you can pay for statewide voter lists or smaller, more specified lists from the Secretary of State's office. It costs $500 for a statewide voter list. You can specify whether you want historical data from previous elections, only active or only inactive registered voters, and a lot more. The Center for Voter Information, or CVI, goes on to say that they are sending the report card to encourage election participation and that they will look at public records again after the election to determine if the recipient did vote. But, and this is the big question here, is what they're doing actually legal? The short answer is yeah. Well, voters and election officials have raised some red flags. The CEO of both nonprofits associated with the letters say they've been using this tactic for decades. The goal, they say, is to help register voters from groups usually underrepresented and get them to the polls.
We have found that they are the most effective tool at increasing voter turnout. At the end of the day, as an American, I think what we want is a robust election with everybody turning out, so our representation is based on the people who are voting.
Coercion are illegal in all stages of the voting process in every state. However, the letters don't explicitly tell anyone to vote or who to vote for, and all the information is publicly available. So, yeah, it's legal. The CVI website also says it provides samples to all of its mailings to top state election officials just to make sure that they comply with all the state laws. However, that doesn't seem to be enough for some state officials. Last week, the Attorney General of Maryland filed a cease and desist letter, this one, arguing the CVI letters violate state law by influencing or attempting to influence the choice to vote or methods of voting by threats and intimidation. This is not the first time that CVI has run into trouble with its Get Out the Vote efforts either. In October of 2020, ProPublica reported that issues with CVI mailers buried election officials in unnecessary paperwork and swamped them with calls from concerned or confused voters. It also outlined problems with the CVI that they had with sending voter registration forms to the deceased, to longtime voters who are already registered, and even to pets with human-sounding names. The organization told ProPublica it takes proper care to check state databases, but occasionally mistakes do get through. Regardless, over the years, voters and election officials from several states, including Kentucky, Florida, Alabama, Virginia, have asked their attorney generals to get the CVI to stop for one reason or another. But obviously, they're still at it, right here in the Northwest. We'll be back right after this. You probably know by now, but just in case, things are changing when it comes to electing a city council in Portland. It's being done by ranked choice voting, and 3 winners are going to be picked from each of 4 different districts, so a total of 12 city council members. Let's hone in on one of the city council races, District 1. It'll be the first time East Portland has representation guaranteed on the city council. And several of the top candidates told our Blair Best that Portland's new form of government will be most apparent in their new district.
A new form of government is aimed at ending a decades-long neglect felt by East Portlanders.
The people that have lived here for a long time, we're done with it.
On this year's ballot, Portland is broken up into 4 districts. East Portland, beyond I-205, is District 1. 3 people from each district will sit on city council, making a total of 12 councilors. Here's where it can get overwhelming. 98 people are running for those 12 seats, and these 16 candidates are running for District 1. We caught up with the top 7 candidates for District 1, where this new form of government arguably will be felt the most.
You know, it's like, who are these people?
Here's why they're running.
I am running, well, in part, I just love this part of the city. I grew up in Park Rose. I live in Lentz. I've lived east of 82nd Avenue the majority of my life. I think it's a really special place that has shaped me, and it has not received the investments that it needs or deserves.
I'm running for District 1 because for the first time, East Portland, they have an opportunity and they deserve someone who is going to be relentless in fighting for them and being their champion.
Like a lot of people in Portland, I'm frustrated with the direction the city has gone over the last 4 or 5 years. I see a lot of candidates who are saying exactly the same things that previous city councilors or commissioners have said that haven't worked, in my opinion, and it's time for a different voice on city council.
A lot of perspectives have been missing from local government, whether that's, parents of young kids, first generation immigrants. And so I felt that that was an important perspective to bring too.
We have a lot of fresh talent who are running for city council right now. And while that's really exciting, we don't have a lot of folks who know how to read a zoning map or a budget document. And I have been in community service and public service in Portland for over 20 years. And I think that I might have some very specific, relevant experience to make sure that we can just hit the ground running.
As somebody that was on the Charter Commission and really helped to build this vision for a more equitable democracy in Portland, I'm really running because I want to make sure that it works.
Well, it's important that District 1 have representation that can actually bring an understanding of public safety. That was the biggest thing for me. Somebody that can bring balance, right?
As for the issues most pressing in East Portland,
well, I've been incarcerated.
Public safety, including gun violence, tops the list.
Because I don't think nobody compares to public safety. Even the work we do, you bring up gun violence. Our work and help develop the ceasefire model in our city, the one that we've invested in. So I have an understanding of what it takes to bring resources into community to help stop gun violence.
I'm going to be coming at it at a different level. I'm a small business owner. I am an elected official, former elected official, but I want to make sure that our communities are not just surviving, that we're thriving. Without a doubt, it's economics, it's jobs. We need to make sure that our salaries catch up with the rest of the city.
Definitely public safety, and that means law enforcement. We don't have enough officers to quickly respond in emergencies, and 911 hold times are too long.
Community safety is an important issue to East Portlanders, and I think that goes beyond just, gun violence and crime, right? I mean, just earlier this week, we had another person get killed on our streets. Our streets are the most dangerous in the entire city, and we just continue to lack infrastructure that's critical to making everybody feel safe.
Also housing and homelessness. So, I serve on the Planning Commission. We need to invest in a diversity of shelter options in order to help move people into a place of stability.
We must urgently address the situation on our streets, get our neighbors into housing, off of sidewalks and parks, and into the services and supports that they need, and actively clean up public spaces.
Another thing for me personally is health equity. So East Portlanders have a life expectancy 10 years less than people living west of 82nd Avenue due to higher rates of gun violence and traffic crashes. And so that is my overall lens for how I view policy.
Go up, say hi to people.
Just days away from the election.
And hopefully they'll vote for Noah for District 1.
They have this message for East Portland voters.
Yeah.
People are putting it off and putting it off. You just have to sit down, pull out that voter's pamphlet, look and see who has delivered for you.
I have been delivering for East Portland for years at this point, you know, whether it was leading on charter commission, leading on issues of police accountability and community safety, and as the executive director of an environmental justice organization that is, making sure that East Portlanders are getting the life-saving climate resources that they need.
We didn't just win, we just finally got a seat at the table. And that's fundamentally different.
I think we got some work. There's going to be some fighting, there's going to be some wrestling, but I think ultimately if you spent the last year in this fighting, risking and giving up everything to represent the city, I think you're going to bring the best interest to this city.
Well, make sure you get your vote in on time. Obviously, we've seen some really horrible things with people damaging ballots, so make sure if you put your ballot in that it did get to the elections office.
Yeah, so I'm very excited for this campaign to be over. I mean, it's been a great ride. We're executing well, but it'll be exciting when we reach that milestone for sure.
Blair Best, KGW News.
Hey, don't forget the KGW team will be with you every step of the way tomorrow night. We'll have hours of election coverage for you, streaming for free on KGW+. Political analysts will be on hand to break down the results as we get them. Our team of reporters will be spread out across the region covering election night parties. Coverage starts at 7 o'clock, and we hope to see you then. In the meantime, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. If you don't have it already, be sure to download our free streaming app, KGW+. It's available now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. Political coverage has taken our slot the next few nights. I hope you'll tune in for that. And we'll be back with another edition of The Story on Thursday night. In the meantime, have a great night, and I'll see you Thursday.